Next, we're going to hear from Dan Poneman. You heard Tom Donnellan say earlier, I think it was Tom, maybe someone else said it, maybe it was Lee. Dan Poneman served from April 2009 until yesterday as the Deputy Secretary of Energy, and since yesterday has been the Acting Secretary of Energy. So we would have been honored on Monday to have him here. We are even more honored to have him here today. Prior to the administration, he worked at the Department of Energy, the National Security Council, the Scowcroft Group. He's written numerous books about national security and about energy, including winning a prestigious award on one for North Korea's first nuclear crisis. At the Department of Energy, he's been at the center of every major energy policy decision that this administration has made. You've heard about his key role helping New York get back on its feet during Hurricane Sandy. What you may not know about Dan is that in the wonky world of Washington, D.C., he's actually best known not for his government post, but for his guitar skill. He's part of a supergroup of high-ranking diplomats who like to rock out at various Washington, D.C. clubs. And this is serious stuff. This one member is Jeff Skunk Baxter, who played with Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers, who now is a noted missile defense expert, of course. And when he comes to Washington to brief the Pentagon, then jams with Dan afterwards. But in seriousness, they play charity fundraisers all over Washington to raise money for good causes. And then that really captures Dan Poneman. He is generous to a fault. He's a deeply respected national security and energy expert, a devoted public servant, and I'm very lucky to say he is a friend. So it's a true honor today that Dan is with us. Please join me in welcoming the Acting Secretary of Energy, Daniel Poneman.
Thank you, Jason, for that somewhat over-inclusive introduction. Really, on a day like that, come to one of America's great universities, and you come on a day like this, and you say, you know what we should do? We should move class outside. So it looks like some people have taken that advice. But listen, it did not take much to persuade me to come join you here today. First of all, for one of America's great institutions to establish a new center to study energy and the global implications of energy, and to bring together such an array of distinguished business leaders, academicians, and thought leaders, that's reason enough. And the second thing is, when Jason calls, it's just hard to say no. It's always important to define your mission with clarity, and I actually was in the car ride up here looking at the mission statement for this new center, and it's quite clear, lapidary in expression, and the mission is to provide independent, balanced, data-driven analysis to help policymakers navigate the complex world of energy. What could be more important? It's the challenge of our generation, the challenge of the century. We are at the beginning of, as Dan Yergin has often reminded us, a new and portentous millennium in energy terms, and to have in this place, in this institution, in this city, a center with that mission, I think, is critically important. The vision is as breathtaking and ambitious as the mission is clear. The vision is to become, or to be, the premier energy policy center in the world. A tall order, but if anyone can pull it off, I would say it's Jason Bordoff. So he embarrassed me a little, so I'll embarrass him a little to say, I don't remember exactly when I met Jason, but he was everywhere in any issue in the first Obama term that energy came to the fore, whether it was strategic petroleum reserves, or dealing with any of the variety of intersections between environmental and energy policies, or perhaps most searingly in those weeks we spent together, both in various conference rooms and with Jason semi-deployed out to the Bronx and Queens during Hurricane Sandy. Jason was always there. He was always there with new ideas. He was always there thinking of what others had missed, thinking, for example, of how we could tap for the first time in history the Northeast Home Heating Oil Reserve and provide some of the diesel product that was wanting here in this region. thinking about how in the aftermath of Sandy we should take another look at issues that we've looked at before in terms of refined product reserves, always thinking of what's the next challenge, what's the next complication to be overcome. Columbia has done very well in selecting Jason to lead this new center. I'm excited, and his ability already to attract talent has been manifested by something that pains me personally, but I'm gratified publicly to say here that their first hire for a new fellow here at the center, I feel like Robert E. Lee, having just lost Stonewall Jackson at Chancellorsville, is my good friend and colleague, David Sandalo. David is a rarity in Washington, someone with genuine, deep, independent subject matter expertise, but also a skilled bureaucrat. And to me, bureaucrat is not a dirty word. This is somebody who knows how to get things done, working in the interstices of different agencies, working with the policy community, working with thought leaders, working with industry. And the administration's loss is certainly Columbia's gain. So congratulations, Jason. Congratulations, David. It's a great start. Absolutely deserves. Now, this center is going to fill a critical gap between academia, business, and government. And again, I'm delighted we have it actually right here in the front row, because I see Dan Yergin and Ryan Lance sitting next to each other. You've heard from them both already. You've heard from our distinguished leader, Tom Donilon. It's a little daunting for me to see what I might say to add to what you've already heard today, but I will offer some comments, perhaps a little more focused in the area that is under the authority of the Department of Energy, but certainly very much informed by, led by the thought leadership of Tom Donilon and our incredible national security structure and the president who leads it. It is, in fact, and whenever I get the opportunity to step out of Washington and go to an academic institution, it's an appropriate moment for reflection. It truly is, it's a Yergin-esque moment, if I may say, of historical transformation and transition. The convergence that we see of rising populations, rising prosperity in the Middle East and Asia, the challenges that we find in the economies of Europe, the daunting challenge of greenhouse gas emissions and doing everything we can to avert the worst potential consequences of dramatic climate change really present us with an extraordinary, indeed a unique challenge. As the President has said, we will respond to the threat of climate change knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations. So this is a compelling task. We have to compress major shifts that typically in the study of energy, which I've had the pleasure, it is a pleasure to have done for many decades now, from a gentle sine curve transpiring over decades into a few short years. And in fact, it is happening. The transitions that we saw from wood to coal, from coal to oil and so forth, look like almost quaint anomalies compared to the quite dramatic transformation that we're trying to engineer now. I'll start with something that I know Mr. Donilon addressed in detail, so I won't address in detail, but merely note for context the highlight of the amazing transformation in hydrocarbons. You know the story. The highest oil production since 1995, the highest natural gas production ever. The one I like, the first time the United States has become a net exporter of oil products since 1949. And I got to take a little footnote here to brag about the department. It's not personal bragging because I wasn't there at the time, but between 1978 and 1992, at a time when people really weren't interested in fracking, really were not interested in shale gas at all, the United States Department of Energy invested a modest sum over that period of time, $137 million, into technologies of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. Not claiming exclusive credit, the Gas Technology Institute played an important role. Limited in time tax benefits played a role, but it shows how the Department of Energy, at early stages of still too early technologies in terms of what a investor would be expecting in terms of return, can make pivotal investments that have prodigious outcomes. Now, from 2000 to 2013, we've gone from 2% to nearly 40% of our annual gas production from this incredible resource. We're talking about a national economy of 23 trillion cubic feet a year. It's been absolutely transformational. It's bringing manufacturing back to our shores, and we need to be very appreciative, but also careful custodians of this opportunity, because I think with this opportunity comes not only a responsibility, but actually a critical path necessity, which is to continue to develop these resources in a manner that is not only environmentally responsible, but also transparent, and that continues to enjoy the confidence of the communities in which the resources are being developed, so that we may continue this incredible transformation and to enjoy the economic benefits that it brings all of us, the lower energy bills it brings to families, the higher employment it brings to communities, and the resurgence of American manufacturing. But as I said, I'm not going to dwell on that because I know Mr. Donilon spent a lot of time on that. I will mention also, when we're talking about hydrocarbons, our great commitment to coal. Coal, obviously, for a variety of reasons, not least of which have been the lowering of gas prices, is not producing as high a percentage of our power as it traditionally has. I've been watching these EIA statistics for years, and it's traditionally been 1/2 coal, 20% gas, 20% nuclear, 10% other. And now with natural gas prices being what they are, coal has come down some, it's gone up some, but it's clearly going to continue to be a major source of power, not only for the United States, but for many other countries in the world, not least of which some of the largest energy consumers, India and China. It is therefore critically important that the $6 billion that we have invested in a variety of clean coal technologies, carbon capture and sequestration, we need to stay the course. We need to demonstrate that we can sequester large amounts of CO2 for long periods safely in geologies that we are able to demonstrate and test. We need to lower the cost of the capture of the CO2 and find other ways to utilize it, for example, through such means as enhanced oil recovery. We are deeply committed to that whole agenda, and we will have to succeed because it's a very important part of our energy future, and we want to continue to develop that resource as safely as we can. In the area of nuclear, we have been through an eventful 4 years. Obviously, from an international standpoint, the events of March 11th, 2011 are seared into our global consciousness, and everybody, every nation in the world has taken full account of the terrible tragedy at the Fukushima Daiichi reactors. We have worked together through the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the international community has truly rallied to make sure that we bring the best possible set of answers and solutions to suggest to Japan, which of course it's their country and they are the ones who are properly in charge of this effort. But we, all of us, have to work to support their efforts, because we, all of us, will continue to depend on nuclear as a critical source of low-carbon energy for our energy future. Now, from a U.S. perspective, we're proud that the United States, with the support of the U.S. Department of Energy Loan Guarantee Program, is building the first commercial power reactors in 3 decades. We're building reactors down in South Carolina and Georgia. The world is watching. We need to make sure we do that job well. And we need to make sure that we do a couple of other things for nuclear to continue to enjoy the role that it can play in terms of helping to build a low-carbon future. Number one, we have to do what we can to make sure we continue to lower the cost of capital. Whether you're talking about nuclear power where fuel prices are low, or you're talking about wind and solar where fuel prices are zero, Everything's about the cost of capital, what we can do to lower that. I just came from the Bloomberg conference, many of you probably attended, and I think there's a lot of thought leadership going on. We need more to see how we can come up with a new set of financial instruments to take advantage of some of the unique attributes of these energy forms and make them more economical from an investment standpoint. But we need to do two other things that are absolutely critical for nuclear to continue to play the role that we hope for it. Number one, we simply have to address successfully the issue of the back end of the fuel cycle. And we have struggled many, many years with this. President Obama asked Secretary Chu to empanel a Blue Ribbon Commission, and we were fortunate to be able to attract, because the job is that important, people of great stature, General Brent Scowcroft, former Congressman Lee Hamilton to lead it. They were fortunate to have Dr. Ernest Moniz as one of their panel members. They came up with a very responsible report, which is properly focusing on issues such as the consent of the governed and the organizational aspects of addressing the back end of the fuel cycle right, because many of the challenges in this area, as in so many others, turn out to be less of an engineering character and more of a governance character. And we are gratified that the U.S. Senate has taken very seriously the recommendations of that Blue Ribbon panel. The administration has embraced the thrust of those findings, and we hope for serious progress this year. And then finally, and this is a bit of my own background, we simply have to keep working at the proliferation problem, because as I've often said, just as a nuclear safety accident anywhere is an accident everywhere, a proliferation incident anywhere could have devastating effect on public acceptance of nuclear energy. And therefore, we have to double down on the President's agenda from the Nuclear Security Summit. We have to continue what he called for in Prague in April 2009 in terms of developing a new framework of peaceful nuclear cooperation for those countries that do live by the rules. If we do these things and do them well, nuclear can and will continue to play a very important part in our energy future. Now, as anyone here in this room certainly knows, the other dramatic story of the last 4 years is in the area of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Renewables really are on the move. I mentioned the doubling that we had in the last 4 years of renewable power generation. The President has now doubled down on that call in asking us to double yet again the power we derive from renewable energy over the next period of years. By 2020, we want to double it again. We want to enhance our energy efficiency by a factor of 2 by 2030. And just in last year alone, we put 14 gigawatts of new wind on the grid, so we're up to 60 gigawatts of wind. Solar obviously is a little bit behind, but there are studies that show we might be able to see perhaps 15% penetration by 2030 of solar, as we're looking for 30% in the area of wind. I've been all over the country. I've seen these plants. Siempre Mesquite, huge photovoltaic plant. We got the largest concentrated solar plant. All of these projects haven't been supported by U.S. Department of Energy loan guarantees. We are continuing to see a portfolio of about 19 projects deploying $23 billion worth of capital, leveraging much more private capital, already lighting 1 million homes. It is on the move, and there's much to go behind it. It's already bringing supply chain jobs back to this country. A few years ago, we were reliant on foreign supplies for 2/3 of our wind turbines. Now we've reversed it. We're getting domestic sourcing for 2/3 of the components for those turbines. We can and we must do more. The President has launched a number of initiatives, many of which with the thought leadership of David Sandalow, electric vehicles everywhere, a race to the top for grid modernization, all absolutely critical to bring this country to the energy future that it needs to enjoy. I'm going to just talk about one last area, because I know we want to leave some time for Q&A, and I have not been looking at my watch. And I do want to focus, however, for just a minute on the subject of grid modernization. I consider this a triple play, because we all know that it's critically important if you're trying to integrate intermittent sources of power into the grid. You need to have a more agile, supple, self-aware, and self-healing grid than what we have today. And we know the role that that will play in enhancing our own productivity, integration of renewables, and achievement of many of the other President's objectives. We also know that as the variability on the other end of the grid, at the area on the load side, has become much more complex via smart metering, green button consumer choice, electrical vehicles that both draw from and feed into the grid, there too, we need to have a much smarter grid to be able to make maximum use of this, to maintain grid stability and have intelligent tariff structures that will support all of these efforts. But also, that's only the first play. We learned in the episode of Hurricane Sandy how much more we need to do to promote microgrids, self-healing grids, islanding opportunities, distributed generation, combined heat and power. All of these elements, which are part of the new energy agenda, will help to make our grids more resilient so people suffer less. We were keenly aware of the 8.5 million Americans who were without power after Hurricane Sandy. The President repeatedly said, after saving life and limb, restoring power was his top priority. We've got to do better. And then finally, the third of the triple play is cybersecurity. As we rely increasingly on IT to run our grids, pick up any newspaper any day, we just need to be more resilient, have better recovery and better response capabilities. And so you have in the grid, and I noticed the painting of former Columbia President Eisenhower in the anteroom there. And I often think that today's grid was the national highway system of the 1950s that he put forth as a national security investment, but also a tremendous driver of jobs and prosperity. I believe that the grid investments of the coming decade can be to our economy today and to our national security what the highway system was in the decade that President Eisenhower was in office. The challenges that we face are clear. We must transform our energy economy from one that is dependent on carbon to a much more diversified, low-carbon future. We'll need the smartest scientists, the brightest engineers, the most far-sighted politicians to get this done. And clearly, in the founding of this center, at this university, at this time, we've got a great start. So, thank you.
So thanks very much. Unfortunately, I was just told that Secretary Poneman's flight back to DC leaves in exactly 60 minutes. So we won't have, but Dan, the Q&A is just deferred. So you have to come back to Columbia. We'll do the Q&A at another time. It's not canceled, it's just deferred. So we'll let you know when we reschedule that, and Secretary Poneman will come back to New York. We're going to take 2 minutes now to just rearrange the chairs, and then I'm going to ask our panelists to come up on stage. Assistant Secretary Pasquale, Sue Tierney, Andrew Steer, and Daniel Yergin.